Hey, we're the Biebers, and we are so excited to share that we are in the process of adopting embryos.
Ooh, adopting
Yes,
embryos.
to expand our
Wow.
family. Yeah, so if you're like most people, you are thinking, what is that? That sounds very bizarre, and I've never heard of that. You're not alone. We hadn't heard about this possibility until last year, and so we are super excited to share this with you. And we're going to just talk briefly a little bit about how we got here, what embryo adoption is, and why we're asking for your help. And I will say that we are doing a website. It's openhearthomewomb.com, and you can follow our story in more detail there. So the link is down below in the text, so I encourage you to check it out.
So, a little bit about our specific story. Jenna and I got married in June of 2013, and like most couples, we had a plan.
I love plans.
Plans are great, but unfortunately, life doesn't always go according to our plans.
Yeah. So we walked through over a year of infertility, which obviously involved a lot of different testing and that sort of thing. And it ended up with me actually on medications as well. And then after all that, we ended up finding out in September 2019 that Brian actually has a genetic mutation such that we are not able to conceive children naturally. So that's where we're at.
Which was unfortunate news, but we are still believing that nothing is impossible with
Absolutely.
God, and that He can absolutely still bless us with our own genetic children. But at the same time, we feel very strongly that God has led us to this path of embryo adoption, and we are really excited to walk it and see where He's leading us and what our story can do for the good of His kingdom.
Yeah. So what is embryo adoption?
What is it, Jenna? Tell
Yes,
us.
I will tell you. So in short, embryo adoption is giving birth to your adopted child.
Oh, now I get it.
You totally get it now.
Yeah.
It's totally cleared up. But seriously, couples who are walking through infertility are often presented with the option to pursue in vitro fertilization. You may know it as IVF, or other assisted reproduction technologies in order to conceive a genetic child. And so those processes may indeed result in children for the hopeful parents, and that's great. However, as fertility doctors will attempt to give their IVF patients the best chance at a successful pregnancy, they will tend to create as many embryos as possible. So just science reminder from back in the old school days, the embryo is when the sperm and the egg are coming together and it begins to divide its cells and is a human being in embryo form. So that's what that is. So with this process, with doctors creating excess embryos, it leaves a surplus of frozen human embryos when those parents have decided that their family is complete. And so according to the National Embryo Donation Center, NEDC, that's the agency we're working with, that surplus is estimated at 700,000 to over 1 million in the United States. So let that sink in. There are potentially around 1 million frozen human embryos in the United States. So parents who have completed their families have to decide what to do with their remaining embryos. And so they have a couple options. They may choose to pay yearly storage fees to store their embryos indefinitely. Obviously not an ideal option. They could destroy their embryos. They could donate them to science, which is essentially destroying them. Or they may donate them to another infertile couple. And so embryo adoption really offers those embryos the potential of life. And so though we ourselves were presented with the option to pursue a very specific kind of IVF in an attempt to create our own genetic children, we felt strongly that that's not God's story for us. And so we like to say that we have an open heart for parenting and for adoption. We have an open home. And due to our infertility, we have an open womb to give these embryos a chance at life. And so in this process, as I've mentioned, I actually have the opportunity to carry and give birth to our children, and that's really exciting. And so in this, we see God's heart of redemption on both sides, redeeming infertility by allowing us to have a pregnancy and a birth and expand our family, and redeeming the life potential of these embryos that have been frozen at their most vulnerable stage. So.
Mm-hmm. So you are now probably thinking, hey, that's a really cool thing. I'm really glad you guys are doing that. That sounds great. But why do you have a GoFundMe? Well, as is the case with things like adoption and assisted reproductive technology, they're very expensive. And so we have decided to give people like you an opportunity to join us in this journey and to come alongside us and support us in this. And we want you to know that if you do decide to partner with us, that your generous gift will go 100% directly towards the costs associated with this journey. And to be as transparent as possible, we've laid those costs out in the text below. So feel free to take a look at that. Take a look at the NEDC website where they have those costs listed as well. And you can see sort of what it is that we're up against and why we're trying to raise the funds that we are. In addition to simply fundraising, we're also trying to raise awareness, and we want to share our story and use our story as a tool to educate and to provide knowledge and a home for as many of these embryos as we can. And so to that point, we're asking you to consider capping your donation at $100. So say you were feeling very strongly that you wanted to give us $200. Well, that's great. We appreciate that. We would ask that you would consider only giving us $100 and instead sharing our story with a friend and encouraging them to give $100. So we would still get our $200 donation from you, but we would also have doubled the amount of people who were reached by our story. So please just consider that as you're prayerfully considering whether or not you want to support us.
Yeah. And some of the costs you'll see down below, they may occur multiple times. So you'll see all of that information in the breakdown that we've provided. But just as one example, the transfer attempt itself is something that will likely occur multiple times. We are praying and believing that we will be successful on the first transfer, and that's great. But it's possible because there's only about a 50% chance per transfer that we will be pregnant. It's possible that we could have to do that multiple times, and we do have to pay for medication each time, pay for the transfer separately each time. And we hope later to have siblings and to return for siblings, so we would be paying for that again. So that's just one example, and you'll get a much better sense if you look at the breakdown below. But we just, as Brian said, wanted to be transparent about what the costs are that are involved. And so just so you have a sense of where we're at in this process, we submitted our application to the NEDC in October of 2019. That was our initial application to, just get started with everything. And we also had to begin our home study process at that point. So even though embryos are not technically considered people in the United States, even though they are people, it's still very much treated like an adoption process because it is. And so a home study is part of that. And so we started that in October, and we worked on gathering all of the necessary documents and completing our very extensive autobiographical applications. And in December of 2019, we finished that, and we had our home study visit. And our agency is currently drafting the final report right now. We expect it to be finalized by the end of this January. So in just a couple days or weeks, hopefully. Yeah. So, and then we had our first visit to the NEDC in Knoxville, Tennessee on January 10th. So less than a week ago from when we are recording this video. And it went very well. I was medically cleared. I had a trial transfer done to make sure that when we actually go for the real frozen embryo transfer, that there would be no issues. All of that was successful and it went well. Everyone was lovely and so great to work with. So that's where we're at in the process right now.
And so we just want to also mention the fact that there are no guarantees in life. There are no guarantees in this process. There's a chance that we could get to the end of this journey and still not have any kids. And in the case that were to be our result and our story, what we would do with any additional funds raised through this effort is we would donate them to the NEDC itself, which is a nonprofit who's really facilitating embryo adoption. We could donate them to another Christian organization who's supporting fostering and adoption, or potentially another couple like us who's in their own journey of infertility and looking to find some assistance in creating their own family. So again, just wanting to be transparent about what would happen with any money that you decide to give to us.
Yeah, so know that your gift would be used to bring about stories of redemption and restoration, regardless of the outcome of our particular story. And the very last thing that I'll mention is if you want to donate to us, but you don't want to do it through GoFundMe, get in touch with me. You can either message me here through GoFundMe, or you can send me an email. I'll have that in the text down below, and we will find a way to make that happen. we'll do PayPal or something like that. So if you want to do that, just get in touch with me and we'll make that work. Because I will say that if you donate through GoFundMe, there is a 2.9% transaction fee and a 30 cent per donation, not 30%, 30 cents per donation fee out of our funds for the processing. So if you would rather us receive your full gift and not lose any of that to fees, just contact me and we'll make that happen. But otherwise, you are welcome to donate here. That's the reason that we have this up. So that's all of the information.
Yeah. The last thing we want to just say is thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for supporting us.
Yes. And please continue to follow our story. Like I said, our website, Open Heart Home Womb, is down below. And we'll be posting a lot of updates there. And so we really hope that you will follow us. And just thanks so much.